Hi, I'm Melius Weideman from Cape Town, and I'd like to talk to you today about website content. Website content refers to the information which is on a web page, which could be text, it could be still images, pictures in other words, it could be video, it could be audio. Either way, it plays an important role in the way a website comes across to the two audiences, namely the user, the human user, and the search engine crawler. Content should be presented in such a way that both audiences are happy, which is sometimes not quite so easy. If you take a look at a typical website which has some content and some images like the one in the slide, you can see that there's a certain layout. In this case, the images appear to be at the top, and towards the bottom there are more text, what appears to be text, and there's also some text in the top left hand corner. However, if you look at this website closely, you'll find on the next slide you'll see the bottom part is highlighted in green and the top part in a red box. Now everything inside the red box is actually an image, and the stuff below in the green box is text. And you might say, but some of the images actually have text on them. In the left hand top corner there's a logo with some text on it, and even in the center, just below the center image, there's also some text. The other two blocks are clearly photographs, so they are obviously images. However, in this case, the whole top block is an image. The way the website was created, they took some of the text and made it part of the images. It's important to know the difference because once again, the two audiences treat this in different ways. If you look on the left, you see that the two audiences represented there, the human being, which is us. Every one of us sitting in front of a computer screen looking at a web page have certain expectations in terms of information that we get, and the search engine crawler or the spider or the robot has a different way of looking at this kind of content. You'll see that the little man there, the human being, will see everything and interpret everything on the web page, both the red block at the top and the text in the green block at the bottom. And together it produces knowledge, and that is what the human wants. However, the crawler only sees the information in the green block, only the text. In other words, it does not see the text which is part of the image in the top part. And that's an important difference because you, again, as we've said, you want to please both audiences. You want to keep the search engine happy so that your website ranks well, and you want to provide information or transactional information or whatever your website is about to the human user. Just to come back to the images again, the crawlers, as we've said, cannot read the images. If there's a picture of a flower or a castle or anything, we as humans can see what the picture is all about, but the crawlers cannot see what the picture is all about. However, there's a way past that, something that has to be done extra, and that is called an alt text, which is a field that the web designer can complete with every image. It is stored with every image, and in there you simply put text. In other words, you might put a half sentence or a full sentence in the alt text field describing what the image is all about. And not only does it help crawlers, but for partially sighted or blind people who often use web page readers, this bit of text helps, because if they view a page with images without alt text, they wouldn't know the image is there, because the reader will simply read the text parts that it finds. If there are images with alt text, it'll read the alt text, and the blind person will know that there's an image, and the sentence that goes with it will tell them what the image is all about. We're still on website content and writing text mostly. The next example shows a typical website, again with an image or two and some text. What appears to be text again at the top, the cloud of words there is again an image. Now the question might be, how much should I write? And the answer is a lot less than what you probably think. The reason being that people read web pages in a very much different way than what they read books or newspapers. And too much text on a web page will simply be skipped, because users like scanning through a web page quickly to try and find what they need. If they don't find what they need, they simply go to the next web page because there's too much text. In the red blocks you can see highlighted the total amount of text on this web page is only 242 words, which is 9 bullets. So it could be something like 10 sentences possibly, which is actually very little. Again, one cannot put figures to everything, but generally speaking, between 200 and 400 words, say 300 words, a little bit more, a little bit less maybe, is taken to be a good standard quantity of words on a web page if you want it to be read. Of course, there are exceptions where you have different types of pages where the quantity might vary widely, but assuming that it's a normal landing page, for example, where people arrive at, you want them to read what's on there, stick to roughly between 200 and 400 words of text per page. While still on writing text for your website, one should consider using keywords as often as possible, where keywords are meaningful words which describe what the website content is all about. And these are normally longer words, and they should be used towards the beginning of the text, especially to catch the attention. To give you an idea of what we mean there is the opposite of keywords are stop words, which you shouldn't use as often as you use keywords. For example, the and that and I, information, computer, internet, words which are overused and also used to join sentences should be minimized without making the text sound strange. If you look at another example of a web page, you will be struck immediately with the sheer mass of text, especially in the bottom right hand section, where you have paragraph after paragraph of writing, which you expect to find in a book. And funny enough, people don't mind reading books that way. We read paragraph after paragraph, but on a web page, users do not want to see chunks of text like this. They would rather prefer, if you look at the next example, pieces extracted to make it easier for them to find what they need. For example, there are about 3 red headings where the user can quickly, within half a second, look at each heading and then decide, yes, this is what I'm looking for, or no, this isn't. And if they want to, they can carry on and read another extract, which is about one and a half sentences below that, and they can click on a link to take them to the whole paragraph of text. So this way you have less text on the screen, so that the important parts can stand out more and the user can easily scan and, as we call it, pick up the scent of the information they're looking for, knowing that if they carry on this thread, they will find what they need. Finally, we get to the readability of the text that you've written. Any text you produce and actually host on a web page should be easy to read. Now that's a relative concept. It should be easy to read for the audience you're writing it for, which means if you're writing it for the man on the street, it should be really light and easy to pick up. If you're writing it for a dedicated technical or scientific or medical audience, then obviously your text will be different. It'll be fully packed with larger words and more difficult to read for the average man in the street. Now the complexity of text is determined by a number of factors. Things like the number of words per sentence. The longer the sentence, the more difficult to read. The number of characters per word. The more they are, the more difficult to read and pronounce. The number of syllabi per word, again, that could make it more difficult. And in general, the complexity of the text itself. Now on the slide you can see a free test program called Readable. The URL is www.read-able.com, where you can simply go to that address and type in the URL of a web page, and it will produce some results in an attempt to show you what the readability level is. If you do that, and especially if you compare your web page to another similar one, you'll get a graph appearing with 6 gray sliders, each one being a different test to test the complexity. And then on the slider there's a colored bar which indicates where it lies. Now in the example on the left hand one, there are 4 green sliders towards the right hand side, meaning the readability level is low, it's easy to read. And on the right hand side, all 6 sliders, the red ones, are towards the left, which indicates it's difficult to read. Now this doesn't mean that the one is bad and the one is good. It simply means that when you write your text, you must make sure that the sliders are in the correct place for your audience. For example, the left-hand one was simply a page taken from a website selling mobile phones and contracts, written for everybody to be able to understand it. So that is why the green sliders are there. The right-hand one is a department webpage from a university website, which is way down from the top, down to one department doing something very specific, biomedical engineering. And the terms used there make sense to the kind of people who want to read it, but they are big, they are strange terms, the sentences are long. So for the man in the street, it will be difficult to read. It doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. It simply means you must ensure that you tie up the content with your audience, and you should compare that with other similar web pages, for example, using this program. In summary, website content is very important to satisfy those two audiences, and you should write it with that in mind. Secondly, there should be enough content to satisfy the human. In other words, they might want text, they might want images, or a mixture. But for the crawler can only read text. So there should be enough information in a text format so that the crawler can pick it up and find and interpret it properly. Thirdly, remember that users do not read web pages the way they read books. So don't give them long chunks of text and expect them to read through all of it. And then finally, you should check the readability by either using the program I've mentioned, which is free, or make use of friends or family or colleagues to test read your web pages and to comment on their readability. Overall, web content is one of the most important things about your website that should be spot on.